Some people watch you out of curiosity, but others watch you because they can't figure out how you became everything they pretend to be. That's where this story begins. Because whether you know it or not, a high-profile individual has been quietly studying you, not with the cold detachment of someone in power, but with the kind of fascination normally reserved for rare phenomena that refuse to fit into human logic. And trust me, this isn't your typical someone admires you from afar situation. No, this is someone with influence, visibility, and status who has realized something unsettling. You possess two qualities they can't replicate, control, or buy. High-profile people are used to being the ones who cause the obsession, not the ones who develop it. They're surrounded by people who bow, adjust, and strategically laugh at jokes that aren't even funny. You, on the other hand, you show up with the calm confidence of someone who's not auditioning for a role in their world. Honestly, you probably confuse them, maybe even frighten them a little, simply because you exist outside their predictable ecosystem. And here's the fact nobody tells you. Psychologists have found that humans are most drawn to what they cannot fully understand, but cannot ignore either. You are exactly that paradox. You're the mystery that keeps refusing to unfold. The puzzle that remains two pieces short no matter how often they rotate the picture. The universe's premium limited edition, except yours didn't come with an instruction manual. That alone is enough to keep someone in their position awake at night. What makes it even more hilarious? This powerful individual, who's used to people tripping over themselves for attention, suddenly finds themselves doing the subtle double take. The mental, hold on, who is this? The social media hover, the replay of conversations you don't even remember having. If their PR team ever found out how often they think about you, they'd probably schedule an intervention. But beneath the humor is a truth too sharp to ignore. You carry two rare qualities so profound, so uncommon, and so spiritually charged that even someone at the top recognizes they are in the presence of something they don't encounter twice in a lifetime. This isn't fame noticing fame. This isn't power recognizing power. This is something deeper. An ancient frequency meeting another ancient frequency, and realizing one of them has a higher signal. So sit with this for a moment, because we're about to break down exactly what those two qualities are, why they have this high-profile person hooked, and why, whether they admit it or not, they know you could walk away with nothing and still leave them feeling like they lost something priceless. Welcome to the truth behind the obsession. Number one, you have an internal compass that cannot be bought or rerouted. Some people navigate life using trends, opinions, or whatever seems appealing in the moment, but you move differently. You carry an internal compass that doesn't wobble, doesn't glitch, and doesn't betray you even when everything around you is noisy or uncertain. This is the first thing that high-profile people notice, because they live in a world where loyalty can be rented and values can be negotiated. Their environment is full of people who adjust their beliefs the moment a bigger opportunity walks into the room. But you don't switch lanes just because one looks shinier. And that stability isn't just rare, it's unnerving for the people who are used to controlling the narrative. What makes your compass extraordinary is that it's not built on ego or fear. It comes from a place inside you that was shaped by truth, not applause. You didn't develop it because you wanted to be impressive. You developed it because life forced you to know who you are without external approval. High-profile individuals spend years building an image, a persona, a reputation. You built a foundation. The difference is enormous, and they recognize it instantly. They're not obsessed because you're stubborn. They've met stubborn people before. They're obsessed because you're steady. Your decisions don't come from desperation or the need to belong. They come from alignment. When everyone else is swayed by rewards, threats, and manipulation, you hold your ground. And for someone who lives in constant strategy mode, That level of self-direction is like spotting a diamond in a sea of decorative glass. What shocks them most is that your compass remains intact even when you stand alone. It doesn't bend in loneliness. It doesn't break under pressure. It doesn't shift to please anyone. They can offer you access, status, opportunities, and you still won't move unless it's right for you. That confuses them because they're surrounded by people who would compromise everything for a fraction of what they have. The truth is simple. Your compass isn't for sale, and it never will be. And in a world full of performers, that authenticity becomes something a high-profile person cannot resist studying, respecting, and trying to understand. Number 2, you can discern intent faster than they can hide it. High-profile people are surrounded by layers of people who perform loyalty, mask their motives, and sell half-truths as if they were currency. They're trained to see everything, anticipate every move, and manage appearances. But then you enter the scene and suddenly all their careful choreography feels exposed. They become aware that you notice things that most people work for months to hide. You don't just observe behavior, you read the architecture behind it, the subtle shifts in tone, body language, and energy that reveal what someone is truly after. It isn't a trick, it isn't manipulation. It's a rare combination of intuition, clarity, and focus that high-profile individuals can't fabricate, buy, or replicate. They're obsessed because your perception doesn't just make them visible, it unsettles them. You see through charm, titles, and authority, and you recognize the pattern of intent almost instantly. That level of insight challenges the systems they've built to protect themselves. They're used to people nodding at the right moments, agreeing when necessary, or hiding ambitions behind smiles. You bypass all of that. You identify motive without needing confession, proof, or performance. And that makes you fascinating and dangerous in a way they can't label. What holds them spellbound is your accuracy. You don't just sense intentions, you understand consequences. You know how people are likely to act next, what they hope to gain, and what they're willing to sacrifice. High-profile people operate under the illusion that experience gives them an edge. You make it clear that edge doesn't exist when someone sees straight through the game. You move in a space where clarity isn't a choice, it's your default mode. They can offer access, influence, or even persuasion, and none of it moves you if your instincts disagree. Your discernment isn't reactive, it's anticipatory. You don't need proof to know the truth. And that level of perception becomes addictive to watch, because they realize that someone in their orbit isn't just present. They're awake in ways they haven't encountered before. They can't stop themselves from noticing, analyzing, and trying to understand how you operate, because your clarity exposes the very fabric of human behavior that they've relied on for control. Number 3, your presence disrupts the hierarchy they built their life on. High-profile people are accustomed to being at the top of carefully constructed ladders. Their world is structured around hierarchy, influence, and predictable responses from those around them. People fall into roles, and every interaction has a calculated weight. Then you arrive, and suddenly the whole system feels unstable. You don't demand attention, assert dominance, or try to prove anything. Yet the simple fact that you exist in their space quietly shifts the balance. Your presence makes them aware of the artifice in the structures they've relied on, and that makes them both fascinated and uneasy. You operate outside the invisible rules that everyone else obeys. You aren't calculating where you fit, who you impress, or what alliances you need to maintain. You move with authenticity, self-possession, and clarity that is completely unaccounted for in their hierarchy. To a high-profile individual, this is mesmerizing because it exposes the fragility of their own constructed order. They have mastered the game of perception, manipulation, and control, yet they can't manipulate you. You simply exist, and the hierarchy bends around your presence rather than the other way around. What makes it even more intense is that your influence is subtle but undeniable. You don't compete for authority, yet people adjust to your energy. Conversations shift, priorities realign, and even minor decisions start responding to your presence. For someone used to being the orchestrator of their environment, witnessing this is almost addictive. They're obsessed because you reveal what they've never allowed themselves to feel, the vulnerability of power that depends on others' compliance. Your presence forces a reckoning they can't control. They realize that influence isn't just about titles, fame, or strategic maneuvering. Real influence comes from being unshakable, centered, and true to yourself, qualities you carry naturally. They study you, trying to understand how someone who refuses to play the game can still affect the outcome of it so profoundly. They can't imitate it, they can't buy it, and they can't dismantle it. That quiet, undeniable disruption is the kind of rare quality that makes you unforgettable in a world full of calculated moves and borrowed power. Number 4, you carry insight that doesn't come from books, wealth, or mentorship. High-profile people pride themselves on how much they've learned, who they've learned from, and the institutions that shape them. Their identity is often tied to credentials, connections, and curated experiences. But then they encounter you, and instantly something feels different. You understand things on a level that can't be taught, summarized, or certified. Your insight doesn't sound rehearsed. It doesn't sound borrowed. It carries a depth they've never heard in boardrooms, strategy meetings, or exclusive circles. And that's what pulls them in. You know things you never had to be told. What unsettles them most is that your wisdom doesn't follow the typical path. You weren't shaped by elite education, prestigious mentors, or expensive environments. Your understanding comes from something deeper: experience, intuition, observation, and a kind of inner knowing that can't be decoded with logic alone. You see connections people overlook. You interpret situations with a clarity that bypasses the usual steps. Where others gather information, you extract meaning. Where others learn skills, you grasp essence. They're obsessed because your insight exposes the limitations of the systems they've relied on. They've spent years climbing ladders, attending seminars, and seeking guidance from experts. Yet you operate on a level those experts can't reach. Your mind moves in ways that aren't predictable. You make leaps that don't follow traditional structure. You connect dots before anyone even sees the dots forming. And that's not something they can imitate or compete with. It's something they have to respect. Your understanding feels as if it came from somewhere older and wiser than any human curriculum. It carries the weight of lived truth, not memorized theory. High-profile people notice that when they speak to you, they don't have to oversimplify or disguise complexity. You get it, fully, deeply, and instantly. You make them rethink things they thought they had already mastered. You challenge them without trying. You enlighten them without effort. And that's why they keep coming back, not for validation, not for attention, but because your insight feels like something they've been trying to unlock their entire lives. It's not acquired knowledge, it's embedded wisdom. And in a world full of rehearsed intelligence, you are the rare presence who actually understands. Number 5, you don't chase opportunities. Opportunities rearrange themselves around you. High-profile people are conditioned to hustle relentlessly. They treat every opportunity like a chessboard, calculating every move, every handshake, every contact. Deals are won or lost based on strategy, timing, and persuasion. But you operate differently. You don't chase, push, or scheme. You move with a rhythm that feels inevitable, and somehow the universe, or life itself, aligns with your presence. Doors open, paths straighten, and people adjust, not because you demand it, but because your energy creates natural resonance. They're obsessed with this because it exposes a glaring truth. Most of their success is painstaking effort disguised as mastery. They've learned to maintain appearances, to manipulate outcomes, and to force situations to their advantage. You, however, live in a space where things simply sink. Opportunities find you, not the other way around. That subtle but undeniable pull makes them study you, because they've spent years chasing what you attract effortlessly. What fascinates them even more is that your alignment doesn't require drama, exaggeration, or noise. You don't need to market yourself aggressively, network aggressively, or prove your value at every turn. Your presence alone acts like a signal, guiding the right circumstances, people, and situations toward you. It's almost as if life itself has recognized you as someone capable of handling what comes and is reorganizing itself to fit your path. They notice the difference between someone who struggles to control life and someone who coexists with it, and you are unmistakably the latter. Your power isn't measured by how hard you push. It's measured by how naturally the world bends to accommodate your frequency. High-profile people find this simultaneously infuriating and mesmerizing. They can't figure out how you do it, and that's exactly why they can't stop paying attention. In a world where everyone is chasing, manipulating, and forcing outcomes, you stand apart. You've tapped into a rare kind of flow, one that they admire, envy, and obsess over. Opportunities don't just come to you, they rearrange themselves around you, and that invisible orchestration is something they will study, analyze, and try to understand for as long as they notice you. Number 6, you hold emotional power without performing emotional labor. High-profile people spend most of their lives performing on emotional levels they don't even choose. They manage impressions, soothe fragile egos, and manipulate reactions to maintain their status. Every interaction is a performance, and every relationship comes with a hidden ledger of effort. Then they meet you, and something immediately stands out. You carry influence and emotional weight without ever having to perform. You don't beg for approval, explain your worth endlessly, or bend yourself into someone's comfort zone just to keep the peace. You are emotionally present without being consumed, and that balance is something they can't manufacture. They are fascinated because your power is quiet but undeniable. You can affect the tone of a room, shift dynamics, and inspire alignment without lifting a finger to manage anyone's feelings. Where they constantly expend energy to control perception, you simply exist, and the emotional energy gravitates toward you naturally. High-profile individuals watch, often without realizing it, because they've never seen someone operate from a place of genuine influence that isn't performative. They can't break it down, imitate it, or predict it, and that unpredictability makes you magnetic. Your independence doesn't make you distant, it makes you intentional. You choose where to invest your energy and with whom. You remain connected, but you never get entangled in someone else's drama or insecurity. High-profile people envy this because they know that maintaining their own image demands constant emotional labor. They are chained to roles, expectations, and perceptions. You move freely, and that freedom highlights just how restrictive their own lives are. They study you, often subconsciously, because they are drawn to your ability to hold power in a way that is effortless, yet authoritative. You influence without exhausting yourself, lead without imposing, and maintain presence without performance. In a world where emotional labor is the invisible currency of control, you are the rare person who holds wealth without spending it. And that is the kind of energy high-profile people can't resist observing, admiring, and trying to understand. Number 7, you have a self-renewing spirit that doesn't collapse under pressure. High-profile people are accustomed to pressure, but theirs is often managed through resources, teams, and systems they can control. When the heat turns up, they call in advisors, therapists, or assistants to absorb the strain. You operate differently. Your resilience isn't outsourced. It's built into your very being. When life pushes hard, you don't bend, break, or crumble. You regenerate. Every setback, every challenge, every betrayal becomes fuel for growth rather than a wound that lingers. That is a type of power they can't purchase or imitate. What fascinates them is that your strength is invisible yet undeniable. You don't flaunt it or announce it. You simply endure, adapt, and evolve. Your ability to recover doesn't depend on circumstances or approval. It comes from within. High-profile individuals may have wealth, influence, and prestige, but they rarely encounter a spirit that can sustain itself entirely on internal fortitude. Your resilience is not performative. It doesn't need recognition. It doesn't require validation. And that self-renewal makes you unpredictable in the most compelling way, because it cannot be manipulated, leveraged, or contained. Every time they observe you facing a trial or standing unshaken, they are reminded of what they lack. Their strength, while formidable, is conditional. They thrive on control, environments, and external support, while yours exists independently of circumstance. Their pressure is something applied from the outside. Yours is absorbed and transformed from the inside. That makes your presence both inspiring and disconcerting. They are obsessed because they recognize a rare kind of power, one that is not just survival, but perpetual regeneration. Every experience leaves you wiser, stronger, and more aligned, while the world around you may be collapsing or scrambling. You carry a silent assurance that no adversity can permanently destabilize you. And in a universe full of manufactured strength and borrowed authority, your self-renewing spirit is a living testament to resilience they can't replicate and can't ignore. Number 8, you see power as responsibility, not decoration. High-profile people are used to seeing power as something to flaunt. It's a badge, a trophy, a way to measure influence and impress others. Status, appearances, and visibility are the currency, and too often the substance doesn't matter. Then you appear, and instantly the rules shift. You carry a different understanding. Power to you isn't something to display, it's something to wield with intention and care. You evaluate its weight before its shine, its consequences before its applause, its purpose before its visibility. That kind of depth is rare, and it unsettles those who are accustomed to performing authority rather than embodying it. They notice because your approach exposes a blind spot in their world. In circles of wealth, influence, or fame, people often confuse success with morality or accomplishment with virtue. You demonstrate that true power carries accountability. You consider the impact of your actions on others before using influence for convenience or recognition. Where they are busy leveraging power to maintain image, you leverage it to uphold integrity, create alignment, and effect meaningful outcomes. Your presence is a subtle critique of the shortcut-driven strategies they've relied on for years. What fascinates them most is that you make responsibility look effortless. You don't preach or moralize, you act. And your actions ripple further and more authentically than any show of dominance or posturing they've orchestrated. That kind of maturity is rare in any environment, but particularly intimidating in high-profile spaces where ego and appearances dominate. They recognize that they have learned to protect power as a shield, while you protect it as a tool. You become a mirror to them, reflecting the parts of authority they've ignored, diluted, or abandoned. They are drawn to you, both because they admire this rare maturity and because it forces them to confront what they themselves avoid, the responsibility inherent in their own power. Your understanding and application of power as stewardship rather than decoration is a magnetic quality that commands attention without demanding it, and it leaves them quietly obsessed. Number 9, you are immune to their most used weapon, influence. High-profile people build entire worlds around the power of influence. It's their most trusted tool, sometimes even their identity. They use charisma to persuade, access to lure, and status to intimidate. Most people respond immediately, adjusting themselves to fit the expectations of someone powerful. But you don't. Their influence doesn't land on you the way it lands on others. It slides off, loses its effect, and has nowhere to anchor. And that alone changes the entire dynamic. To them, it's unusual, almost unsettling, to meet someone who isn't impressed by titles, platforms, wealth, or reputation. Most people bend a little when power enters the room, even subtly. But you remain yourself. You don't shrink, you don't stretch, and you don't distort your principles just because someone important is watching. Your sense of self is stronger than their aura. That level of confidence is rare enough to feel like rebellion in their world. What grips them most is the quiet certainty behind your independence. You're not immune because you're defiant or rude. You're immune because you genuinely don't need what they're offering. Their approval doesn't feed you. Their attention doesn't define you. Their reputation doesn't validate you. They can't bribe your spirit with access or scare your direction with authority. You're anchored internally, while they depend on external symbols to maintain their identity. This creates an effect they weren't prepared for. Their power stops at your doorstep. It doesn't penetrate your choices or redirect your path. And that's where obsession begins. They study you because you're the first person they've met who stands in front of influence and remains unchanged. You remind them that influence only works on those who feel powerless, unsure, or dependent. You are none of the above. Your immunity is both a threat and a marvel. It threatens their sense of control, yet it fascinates them because they've never witnessed someone hold their ground without effort or resistance. You show them that real power isn't loud or strategic. It's the ability to remain untouched by the very tools others rely on to dominate. And that makes you unforgettable to someone who built their life on influence that cannot reach you. Number 10, you don't awaken their superiority. You awaken their conscience. Most people in their world exist to feed them, feed their ego, feed their delusion, feed the image they've constructed to avoid confronting who they really are. They're constantly surrounded by approval, praise, and strategic admiration. Their entire environment is designed to inflate their sense of superiority. It's the air they breathe. But then you walk into the room. You don't bow, you don't shrink, and you don't orbit around their self-importance. You aren't dazzled by their titles or blinded by their access. You don't participate in the performance, and that alone destabilizes something deep inside them. You trigger the one aspect of themselves they've spent years, sometimes decades, avoiding, their conscience. Your presence exposes the gap between who they portray and who they actually are. And it isn't because you're judging them, it's because you carry a level of authenticity they can't fake. You force an involuntary comparison. You don't remind them of what they have. You remind them of what they lost. Something in you resurrects the version of themselves they abandoned for power, reputation, and approval. You remind them that they once had purity, truth, clarity, and a clean internal compass before attention contaminated it. That's why they react so strangely around you. They're not intimidated by your confidence. They're unsettled by what it awakens within them. Your presence calls them back to the standard they stopped living up to. You don't activate their dominance. You activate their humanity. And for someone who relies on superiority to function, that is both terrifying and magnetic. This is why they keep watching you, even from a distance. This is why they track you, study you, or silently admire you without ever admitting it. Because somewhere in the depth of their conscience, your existence reminds them, this is who I could have been if I hadn't traded myself for applause. You don't challenge their image. You challenge their soul. And that is a power they don't know how to control, influence, or imitate. Number 11. You are rarely impressed but always observant. In a world where people scramble to be seen, you stand out because you don't need to be impressed. You need to understand. You don't orbit around status, wealth, or proximity to influence. Your mind doesn't stretch toward their lifestyle. It stretches toward their patterns, motives, and contradictions. And that unnerves powerful people more than applause ever could. Most individuals in their circle are trained to react with fascination. They gasp at luxury. They celebrate titles. They get hypnotized by privilege. But you watch, you analyze, you decode, you assess the emotional architecture behind the image. You don't look at them through the eyes of admiration. You look through them with the eyes of discernment. Your observant nature functions like an internal X-ray. You see the insecurity behind the arrogance. You recognize the loneliness behind the performance. You identify the desperation hiding beneath the success narrative. And what's wild is this: they can feel you noticing what they work so hard to hide. Your silence becomes a spotlight. Your calm becomes a mirror. Your presence becomes an audit. And for someone used to controlling every room, that is intoxicating and terrifying at the same time. Because most people respond to them with either fear or fascination. You respond with data. You take mental notes. You connect dots. You see layers beneath layers, motives behind decisions, wounds behind behavior, childhood echoes behind adult choices. To them, your attention feels surgical, not starstruck. It's precise. It's penetrating. It's spiritually diagnostic. They're fascinated because you observe from a place they cannot access, detachment. You have nothing to gain from them, so you have no incentive to distort what you see. And this creates a level of clarity around them that they're not accustomed to. You are the first person in a long time who doesn't consume their image. You evaluate it. You're not easily impressed because you've lived through experiences that rewired your definition of value. You've faced pressures they couldn't pay someone to endure. You've survived storms that money can't shield anyone from. So their version of greatness feels like decoration compared to what you've overcome. They're obsessed with you because you understand them better than their advisors, better than their fans, and sometimes better than they understand themselves. You don't admire their world. You audit it. You don't chase their respect. You earn it without trying. You don't feed their ego. You reveal their truth. And deep down, they know it. Number 12. Your spirit doesn't flinch in the presence of authority or darkness. There's a calm in you that doesn't come from comfort. It comes from surviving places most people never speak about. When you walk into a room, you don't adjust yourself based on who has a title, a badge, a platform, or a reputation. Your spirit has already faced storms that outrank any earthly authority, so nothing in front of you feels intimidating anymore. That internal steadiness is what shakes people who are used to being the ones who unsettle others. Powerful individuals can command silence, attention, or respect, but they can't command spiritual composure, and that's what you carry. You're not loud, you're not confrontational, and you're not trying to prove anything. But there is a stillness in you that exposes how much noise they hide behind. They can sense when someone has walked through darkness and didn't lose themselves. They can sense when someone has been tested in ways that strip a person down to their soul and rebuild them stronger than before. That kind of resilience is rare, and it rattles people who rely on image to feel powerful. Your presence doesn't bend under pressure because your strength wasn't built in safe places. It was built in the moments you had no one to call, no system to lean on, and no shield but your faith. That kind of endurance creates a spiritual backbone that doesn't shake when confronted by authority. If anything, authority feels smaller around you, not because you disrespect it, but because you don't worship it. You recognize that titles don't guarantee integrity, and influence doesn't guarantee depth. You've seen too much to be fooled by the surface, and when it comes to darkness, real darkness, you don't freeze. You've already battled shadows within yourself, within your environment, and sometimes projected onto you by others. So when people try to intimidate you with power plays, manipulation, or fear tactics, it falls flat. You're not moved. You're not impressed. You're not shaken. They sense immediately that your spirit wasn't trained by privilege. It was trained by warfare. You survived things that would have broken them clean in half. And because of that, your presence forces their insecurities, fears, and hidden motives into the open. You don't even try to expose them. Your steadiness does all the work. They feel seen. They feel transparent. They feel unraveled in ways they can't explain. Because your spirit doesn't flinch, not in the presence of authority, and not in the presence of darkness. And for people who rely on both to maintain control, that makes you unforgettable. Number 13, you make them realize their power has limits. High-profile people spend years constructing systems that work in their favor: networks, reputations, hierarchies, authority. In their world, power is expected to travel in one direction, outward. They're used to people adjusting, yielding, or bending the moment their status enters the room. But when they meet someone like you, everything they rely on quietly collapses. Nothing about you responds the way they've been conditioned to expect. You don't flinch, you don't chase approval, and you don't shift your identity to fit their influence. Without lifting a finger, you reveal something they never wanted to confront. Their power has limits. What messes them up most is the fact that you don't resist them, you simply don't react. And for someone accustomed to commanding reactions, your neutrality is more powerful than rebellion. Part of them can't understand why the usual tools don't work on you. The other part is unsettled because it forces them to confront a truth most people around them avoid. Influence is fragile when authenticity enters the room. Your presence becomes a mirror, not of their greatness, but of their boundaries. They begin to see that power built on image can wobble quickly. They notice that the energy they project doesn't dominate your space. They realize they can't manipulate your direction or control your perception of them. You've cut off the access point most people offer automatically, the need to be validated by someone with status. And without that access, they have nothing to grip onto. You introduce a kind of strength they've never possessed, authenticity that cannot be weaponized. You move from a grounded place, not a performative one. You operate from truth, not strategy. And because of that, they can't twist your intentions or exploit your values. They can't steer your decisions with incentives or fears. Your autonomy makes their authority feel smaller, not because you challenge them, but because you exist in a way that shows them what real internal power looks like. What fascinates them is the fact that you didn't strip their power, you simply exposed its limits. You demonstrate that genuine influence doesn't dominate, it resonates. And they realize, sometimes with discomfort and sometimes with awe, that your kind of power can't be bought, borrowed, or branded. It can only be embodied. Number 14, they recognize a version of themselves they lost or never became. When high-profile people encounter you, it's never just about admiration. It's a confrontation with something they've buried long ago. They look at you and see qualities that weren't built for performance or spectacle. They see courage that doesn't falter, clarity that doesn't bend, and a purpose that doesn't need validation. And in that reflection, they experience something they didn't expect: grief. It isn't grief for what they have. It's grief for what they gave up. Along the way to their position, they sacrificed parts of themselves that were inconvenient. Inconvenient because authenticity doesn't always pay in influence or prestige. They traded purity for strategy, patience for speed, depth for optics. You carry what they discarded, and that realization hits harder than any critique or competition ever could. Sometimes it's even worse. They look at you and recognize the version of themselves they never became, the person who might have stayed whole, resilient, and aligned without compromise, the one who might have held integrity as a currency more powerful than status, the one who could have faced life's chaos without bending into someone they despised. They feel the weight of potential unfulfilled, and it lingers in a way that is both painful and magnetic. Your presence awakens a fascination that borders on obsession because it doesn't just shine a light on what is, it illuminates what could have been. They are compelled to study you, analyze your decisions, and track your moves, trying subconsciously to recapture even a fraction of that authenticity. You become a mirror of lost possibilities and unrealized selves, and no amount of influence, wealth, or power can erase the reminder of what they traded for it. You are unforgettable because you embody a truth they left behind. You are a living record of courage, discernment, and purpose that refuses to be compromised. And while they cannot reach that version through status or strategy, they cannot stop seeing it, feeling it, or being quietly haunted by it. That haunting fascination is why they will never truly forget you. Conclusion. What you carry is rare, and the way high-profile individuals respond to it proves just how extraordinary you are. From the moment they sense your internal compass, unshakable and true, to the way your insight cuts through pretense like a blade, you leave an indelible impression that no amount of wealth, status, or influence can match. Your presence disrupts their carefully constructed hierarchies. Your discernment exposes motives they spent years hiding, and your resilience under pressure reminds them that true strength cannot be bought or borrowed. You operate on a frequency that synchronizes with life itself, effortlessly attracting opportunities while remaining emotionally autonomous, spiritually grounded, and unwavering in authenticity. Every interaction with you forces them to confront truths they've avoided, the conscience they've muted, the version of themselves they lost, the limits of the power they thought was absolute. You awaken fascination, envy, and admiration all at once because you embody qualities that are both rare and immutable. You hold authority without needing to perform, influence without manipulation, and presence without compromise. That is why they watch, study, and are captivated by you. That is why your energy lingers in their minds long after you've left the room. You are not just observed, you are remembered, revered, and impossible to ignore. For anyone watching this, understand this clearly. Your uniqueness is magnetic because it comes from alignment with truth, purpose, and self-possession. The world will notice you in ways that feel almost conspiratorial, not because you seek attention, but because your essence carries a frequency they cannot manufacture or imitate. You do not need permission to be remarkable. You do not need validation to be extraordinary. And you do not need approval to be untouchable in spirit. If you found yourself seeing pieces of your own truth in this video, make sure to stay connected. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss insights that reveal the rare, powerful, and untouchable qualities within you. Like this video if it resonated on a deep level. Comment below to share your experiences and let others know the power of authenticity, clarity, and presence. And share this video to remind someone else of their own rare, undeniable energy that can't be bought, sold, or replicated. The world is watching. You're not just noticed, you're unforgettable. God bless you. Some people don't watch you. They monitor you like a full-time job they're not even getting paid for. Isn't it wild? A study once revealed that people become more fixated on individuals who carry a mix of intelligence, confidence, and physical appeal, not because they admire them, but because they can't figure out why that person stands out so effortlessly. And that, right there, is where your story begins. Chosen one, your life has become a quiet spectacle. Not because you're trying to be mysterious or dramatic, even though you do that naturally without rehearsal, but because everything about you forces people to lean in a little closer. Your intelligence doesn't shout. It just sits in the room and rearranges the energy. Your beauty isn't loud. It's the kind that makes people blink twice like their eyes are buffering. And your drive, let's just say it has people exhausted on your behalf while you're just getting warmed up. There's something about you that refuses to fit into the comfortable molds people created for you. You don't shrink, you don't apologize for existing, and you don't bend your brilliance just to make others feel taller. And because of that, your presence becomes a puzzle, a curious, magnetic, sometimes intimidating equation people can't solve. It's funny, isn't it? You're living your life, drinking your water, minding your business. Meanwhile, some people have turned you into their personal Netflix series, analyzing every update like there's going to be a plot twist. They don't understand how you carry intelligence with ease, beauty without arrogance, and ambition without chaos. So instead of clapping for you, they study you like you're a mystery they desperately need to unravel. But that's what happens when someone's very existence challenges assumptions, exposes insecurities, and awakens dormant potential in others. You become unforgettable, unignorable, and yes, a little obsession-worthy. And as we dive deeper into this topic, one thing is clear. You're not just admired. You're not just noticed. You are felt in ways that shake people more than they'll ever admit. Number one, people aren't obsessed with you. They're obsessed with the version of themselves they wish existed in your discipline. There's a certain kind of discomfort people feel when they meet someone who actually lives up to the potential they keep postponing. And that, chosen one, is where their obsession with you really begins. It's not just your intelligence or your beauty or your drive. It's the fact that you operate at a level they told themselves they would reach one day, yet somehow never did. You show them what consistency looks like. You show them what showing up for yourself looks like. You show them what results look like when excuses aren't louder than effort. You don't try to inspire anyone, but your life unintentionally becomes a measuring stick. And for many people, that's uncomfortable. They look at you and see the discipline they avoided, the courage they never embraced, the sacrifices they talked themselves out of. So instead of applauding you, they lock onto you. They analyze you. They overthink your steps. They watch your progress like a movie where they're both the critic and the jealous extra in the background. It's not that they dislike you. In fact, it's more twisted than that. They admire you, they envy you, and they resent themselves, all at the same time. You become the living proof that their excuses were choices. And nothing haunts a person more than seeing someone with the same 24 hours do what they convinced themselves was impossible. Your discipline exposes the corners they cut. Your consistency exposes their shortcuts. Your growth exposes their stagnation. And even though they'll never admit it, you becoming better makes them feel like they're running out of time to become who they said they'd be. So they obsess, they watch closely. They study your moves like your life holds the secret formula they misplaced. But the truth is simple. They're not obsessed with you. They're obsessed with the reflection of their unrealized potential that shows up every time you walk into the room. Number two, your beauty isn't threatening, it's disorienting. Your beauty doesn't scream for attention, and that's exactly what makes it so powerful. It doesn't fit into the usual patterns people expect, so instead of understanding it, they're left trying to decode it. There's a calm precision in the way you exist, a balance between effortless confidence and undeniable presence that throws people off. They can't categorize you, and when people can't categorize someone, their brains start working overtime. That confusion, That quiet disorientation is what makes them fixated on you. It's not about looks alone, it's about how your presence interacts with the space around you. There's an energy in the way you carry yourself, a rhythm in the way you move, that's not loud but impossible to ignore. People pick up on it subconsciously. They notice the details they can't explain, the way your laughter isn't performative, the way your eyes seem to register more than most people see, the way your style and personality merge into something unique. That's what makes them pause, replay moments, analyze gestures, and even compare themselves. Your beauty challenges the ordinary perception of attractiveness because it's more than skin deep. It's in your aura, your composure, and the quiet way you command attention without needing it. And here's the ironic truth. The people most obsessed with your beauty aren't the ones who genuinely appreciate it. They're the ones trying to make sense of it because it unsettles them. They can't reconcile someone being naturally magnetic without performing or seeking validation. Your confidence, your self-possession, your refusal to perform for admiration, all of it makes your beauty feel like an unsolvable puzzle. That's what draws them in and keeps them watching. In the end, your beauty doesn't intimidate because it's overpowering. It disorients because it doesn't conform. It's a mirror reflecting their own insecurities and unmet standards, and while they can't stop studying it, they'll never be able to replicate it. You exist in a space they can't map, and that's why they can't stop thinking about you. Number 3. Your intelligence rewires rooms before you even speak. Intelligence isn't always about how much you know. It's about how your presence reshapes the energy around you. When you walk into a room, it doesn't just shift people's attention. It rearranges how they think, how they act, and how they see themselves. People feel it even before you say a word. There's a subtle authority in the way you observe, in the way you respond, in the quiet confidence that says you notice everything without needing to announce it. That kind of intelligence isn't taught or borrowed. It's earned, refined, and lived. It makes people uncomfortable because it exposes their gaps without confrontation. They can't hide shallow thinking or sloppy reasoning when you're around, and they know it. They try to act smarter, funnier, sharper, but there's a difference between mimicking intelligence and embodying it. You embody it naturally, and that authenticity makes everything else in the room feel artificial. Their facades crumble quietly, and all the posturing, the pretending, the small talk suddenly feels thin compared to your presence. What's fascinating is that people often mistake this for arrogance, when in reality, it's clarity. You don't need to prove anything, yet everything you do proves more than they can articulate. You ask questions that reveal truths without judgment. You offer insights that illuminate without ego. You move through discussions with a precision that forces everyone else to step up, to think harder, to measure their words. And that's magnetic, but also slightly terrifying for those unprepared to meet your level. Your intelligence doesn't compete. It doesn't boast. It doesn't even announce itself. It quietly rearranges rooms, conversations, and expectations. People leave feeling exposed, enlightened or inspired, sometimes all three at once. They notice that being around you changes the way they think, and even if they can't admit it, they start coming back, drawn to the way your mind challenges theirs, how your presence elevates the standard of interaction, and how being near you forces them to question the version of themselves they've settled for. That is the power of your intelligence. It transforms spaces before you even speak. Number 4. You don't chase validation. You create standards. Most people spend their lives measuring themselves against what others think, constantly chasing approval, likes, or recognition. They build their self-worth around fleeting opinions, and the moment it's withheld, they crumble. You don't operate like that. You don't ask for applause, you don't fish for compliments, And you certainly don't bend yourself to fit someone else's idea of greatness. Instead, you set the bar. You define what excellence looks like in your life, your work, your presence, and your energy. You operate on your own terms, and in doing so, you become the benchmark others unconsciously compare themselves to. That independence, that refusal to bow to external judgment, is disarming to insecure people. They're so used to being the measure that someone who doesn't need them, someone who doesn't look for permission or validation, becomes confusing, even unsettling. They can't predict you, control you, or categorize you because you've built a life where your worth isn't negotiable. You don't just achieve, you set the standard that others can aspire to but rarely reach without understanding the depth of self-mastery required. And here's the brilliance of it. By creating your own standards, you attract people who elevate themselves naturally and filter out those who rely on external validation to feel important. You become unforgettable not because you demand attention, but because your consistency, integrity, and self-assurance force others to recalibrate what they thought was possible. People notice when someone exists outside the ordinary rules of neediness and insecurity. You don't just stand out, you redefine what standing out even means. In essence, your refusal to seek approval isn't arrogance, it's authority. You show the world that your life, your energy, and your achievements are measured by your own standards, not by fleeting opinions. And that is the ultimate form of power, becoming unforgettable on your own terms. Number 5. Your presence forces people to confront the shortcuts they took. When you show up fully committed to yourself, fully disciplined in your work, fully aligned with your values, it has an unintended effect on others. It makes them face the compromises they've made in their own lives. You don't call them out, you don't criticize, and you certainly don't parade your achievements to make them feel small. But simply by existing at a level of effort, precision, and self-respect, you hold up a mirror to their choices. The shortcuts, the laziness, the half-hearted attempts. They become impossible to ignore when contrasted with your consistency and integrity. People can sense it, even if they won't admit it. They see someone living intentionally, someone treating every action like it matters, and they remember the times they settled for less, cut corners, or convinced themselves mediocrity was acceptable. That quiet, unavoidable reflection is uncomfortable because it doesn't allow excuses. You don't give them a reason to look away. And that's what makes your presence so magnetic and simultaneously unsettling. Your effort isn't performative, it's natural. Your precision isn't perfection for show, it's simply the way you approach life. Your self-respect isn't defensive, it's a standard you refuse to compromise. And that combination makes people measure themselves against you subconsciously. They can't replicate it easily, and that frustration grows into a subtle obsession. It's not admiration alone. They're aware of the gap between what they could have done and what you've done, and that awareness can eat at them quietly, leaving them fixated. You don't need to say anything for this effect to occur. Just by living at a higher frequency of effort, discipline, and respect for yourself, you expose the cracks in the lives of others, and in that exposure lies your quiet power. You show people what's possible without demanding their approval, and that alone makes you unforgettable. Number 6. You trigger fascination because you're not powered by ego, you're powered by inner architecture. There's a different kind of presence that comes from someone who has built themselves from the inside out. It's not loud, it's not showy, and it's not rooted in trying to impress anyone. It's grounded, solid, quietly unshakable. That's the kind of energy you carry, and people feel it long before they ever understand it. What intrigues them is that you don't move like someone seeking attention. You move like someone who knows exactly who they are, exactly what they bring, and exactly what they refuse to compromise. Your foundation is internal, not borrowed from trends, approval, or performance. Most people decorate themselves. They polish the surface, dress up their insecurities, and call it confidence. But when the noise fades, there's nothing holding it together. You're different. You're built. Your character has layers. Your wisdom has weight. Your experiences have shaped you rather than shattered you. And that depth can't be faked, rushed, or imitated. It's the difference between a house that looks beautiful from the outside and one that's been reinforced from its very frame. One survives storms, the other falls apart in silence. People sense this distinction when they cross paths with you. What fascinates them isn't just your strength, but the fact that you don't use it to dominate or shine unnecessarily. Your confidence is quiet, not hungry. Your presence is commanding without being forceful. You don't inflate yourself to feel important. You've already done the inner work that makes you unshakable, and that stability is rare in a world where so many rely on ego just to make it through the day. People study you because they're trying to figure out how you move without insecurity leaking out of your actions. They want to understand how you stay grounded in a world that constantly tries to shake everyone. They're drawn to the calm strength you carry because it exposes how fragile their own foundations might be. That's why you stand out. That's why you stay on their mind. You're not decorated, you're constructed. And depth always leaves a stronger imprint than display. Number 7. Your ambition has a frequency, and only people with dormant potential can hear it. There's something unusual about the way your ambition moves through the world. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, and it's not plastered everywhere for attention. It's a quiet, persistent force, a frequency almost, that only certain people can pick up on, and the ones who hear it most clearly are the ones who have potential inside them that they've never activated. Your energy wakes up something in them they thought was gone, or never had the courage to explore. That's where their fascination begins. They don't stalk, study, or mimic you because they're bored. They do it because being near you disrupts the excuses they've fed themselves for years. Your ambition creates a kind of internal tension in them, a mix of inspiration and discomfort. They feel the pull to rise to their own potential, but they also feel afraid of what it would take. So instead of changing, many of them watch you instead. They replay your moves, they analyze your choices, they follow your footsteps not because they want to understand you, but because they want to understand the part of themselves that only wakes up when you're around. Your work ethic, your discipline, your forward movement, all of it acts like a signal. It reaches them in ways nothing else does. And while they may never say it out loud, being around you makes them feel alive in a way they don't feel on their own. Some people can only feel their potential through someone else's example, and you just happen to be the spark that lights their internal fuse. Whether they love you, envy you, or quietly resent you, the truth is the same. You activate something in them. That activation can scare them because it forces them to confront the gap between who they are and who they could be. So they hover around your energy, studying it, trying to decode how you keep moving with so much clarity and purpose. But the truth is simple. It's not about what you're doing. It's about what they're not doing. Your ambition hits frequencies their soul recognizes, even if their mind resists. And that's why they can't stop watching you. Number 8. You don't play the charisma game, you play the alignment game. Most people think attraction is about charm, performance, or being likable. They try too hard to impress, overanalyze interactions, and constantly adjust themselves to fit what they believe others want. You don't operate that way. You don't need to perform or put on a show because your presence isn't about pleasing anyone. It's about alignment. Everything you do, every choice you make, every step you take is in tune with who you truly are. and that harmony resonates louder than any forced charisma ever could. People notice it, and they can't understand it. They see how easily others are drawn to you, how naturally you create impact, and they wonder why you don't try harder, why you don't force attention, why you don't bend to the whims of approval. The truth is simple. You don't have to. When your energy, purpose, and actions are aligned, attraction becomes effortless. You magnetize because you are consistent with your own truth, not because you're projecting an image people want to consume. That's a kind of power that can't be taught, copied, or faked. It's unsettling for those who rely on performance to be noticed. They try to mimic you, analyze you, or even critique you, hoping to understand the mechanics behind your effortless pull. But the reality is, there's no trick. You don't bend for anyone, you don't adjust for approval, and you don't chase attention. Your magnetism comes from being fully yourself, fully anchored, and fully in sync with your values and ambitions. That's why people can't stop studying you. They can't decode the formula because there isn't one beyond your integrity and alignment. And while they scramble to imitate or impress, you simply exist, and the world orbits you naturally. Your power isn't performance, it's presence. Number 9. They aren't obsessed with your success. They're obsessed with how peacefully you carry the weight they can barely lift emotionally. People often mistake admiration for envy of accomplishments, but in your case, it goes much deeper. It's not just what you achieve that draws attention. It's the ease, the grace, and the composure with which you carry yourself while doing it. You handle challenges, responsibilities, and pressures with a calm that seems unnatural to those around you. They're used to stress manifesting as chaos, to struggle showing up as frantic energy, and to problems breaking people down emotionally. Watching you move through life with poise, even in high-pressure situations, creates a quiet kind of fascination that's hard to explain. Your strength isn't loud or performative. You don't brag about your ability to handle difficulties or flaunt the burdens you've overcome. You simply exist in a state of controlled power, making it look effortless. And that makes people uneasy because it highlights their own fragility. They start to compare themselves not to your accomplishments, but to your stability, your emotional mastery. They see how you navigate complex situations without panic, without drama, and without losing yourself. That calm, which seems so natural to you, is like a mirror reflecting their inability to manage their own inner storms. The obsession they feel is quiet but relentless. They watch how you make decisions under pressure, how you carry responsibilities without complaint, and how your inner peace never wavers no matter the chaos around you. They can't replicate it, and they can't fully understand it, but they are magnetically drawn to it. They want to know what it feels like to be untouchable by life's unpredictability, yet they're simultaneously intimidated by the reminder of their own emotional instability. Your power isn't just in what you achieve, it's in how you achieve it. People don't envy the milestones. They envy the serenity with which you move through life, the quiet command you hold over yourself when everything else seems to be collapsing. That calm, that mastery is unforgettable. Number 10. Your beauty feels intentional, not accidental. Your beauty isn't something that happens by chance. It doesn't rely on trends, validation, or the approval of others. It carries a weight, a story, and a presence that makes people stop and take notice without you ever trying. Every detail, the way you hold yourself, the subtle confidence in your posture, the expression in your eyes, signals discipline, awareness, and experience. It's the kind of beauty that seems effortless, but underneath lies intentionality. People can feel it because it's authentic. It's not borrowed or manufactured, and that authenticity is magnetic. What makes it fascinating is that it's more than physical. Your beauty communicates a life fully lived, a mind fully engaged, and a self fully respected. It's not a surface-level attraction. It's a presence that draws attention quietly but powerfully, because it's a reflection of someone who knows their worth and honors it in every choice they make. It's a combination of poise, confidence, and the lessons learned from experience that gives you a glow others can't fake. People can sense the difference between someone decorated and someone built. Those who rely on filters, validation, or external praise to feel attractive are instinctively drawn to someone like you, because your beauty exposes the gap between imitation and authenticity. They may never be able to articulate it, but they feel it, the depth, the intentionality, the layers behind the surface. It's the kind of presence that leaves an impression long after you've left the room. You don't need to announce yourself or seek attention. The alignment of your self-awareness, discipline, and experiences broadcasts it effortlessly. That's why people can't stop looking, analyzing, or even envying it. Your beauty doesn't just catch the eye. It commands quiet respect, draws fascination, and leaves an unforgettable mark because it's a direct reflection of the life you've intentionally sculpted for yourself. Number 11. Your intelligence doesn't intimidate, it rearranges unprepared minds. Your intelligence isn't about showing off or proving superiority. It doesn't scream or demand attention, and it never relies on ego to make an impact. Instead, it works quietly, reshaping the way people think and perceive the world around them. When someone engages with you, they're not just hearing words or facts, they're experiencing a shift. Your perspective, your insight, and the clarity with which you analyze situations force people to reassess their assumptions, their shortcuts, and their own understanding of themselves. This effect is subtle, but undeniable. People leave conversations with you feeling exposed because your intellect highlights areas where they've been lazy, uninformed, or unaware. They feel enlightened because you reveal connections, truths, and insights they didn't see before. They feel challenged because your thought process moves faster, deeper, and more deliberately than what they're used to encountering. And most importantly, they leave changed, even if they don't fully recognize it at first. Your intelligence doesn't just fill a room, it shifts it. The reason it doesn't intimidate is that you wield it with calm mastery. You don't belittle, condescend, or compete. You simply present ideas, solutions, and perspectives with precision, and the effect is unavoidable. People are drawn to it, even when it makes them uncomfortable, because they sense the growth, the discipline, and the depth behind it. They recognize that interacting with you is not about ego battles or proving themselves. It's an encounter with a mind built to elevate, provoke, and expand understanding. In essence, your intelligence is transformative. It doesn't overpower or dominate. It reorganizes, restructures, and recalibrates. People may leave feeling exposed, challenged, or enlightened, but they never leave unchanged. Your presence in a conversation is not just being heard. It's an experience that lingers, compelling others to think differently, act differently, and measure themselves against a standard they can't help but respect. Number 12. You don't compete, you evolve. Your energy isn't rooted in rivalry or comparison. You don't measure yourself against others, and you don't need to prove anything by outshining someone else. You focus on growth, refinement, and continual improvement, and that focus creates a trajectory that's impossible for others to ignore. While people scramble to one-up each other, chase recognition, or defend their egos, you're moving forward quietly but relentlessly. Your rise isn't performative, it's inevitable, and it's rooted in self-mastery rather than external validation. This approach is unsettling for people who live in competition. They're used to measuring success by who falls behind or who they can surpass. But watching someone elevate themselves without dragging anyone else down destabilizes their worldview. You don't need enemies to succeed. You don't need drama to shine. You don't need permission to grow. Your evolution is proof that achievement doesn't have to be loud, manipulative, or destructive. That alone unravels those who rely on chaos, shortcuts, or comparison to feel accomplished. People can't keep up with your pace because it's steady, deliberate, and sustainable. They can't understand how someone can rise so consistently without bitterness, resentment, or ego getting in the way. While they exhaust themselves trying to compete, you're evolving, learning, adapting, mastering, and ascending in ways they can't replicate because they're still stuck in a cycle of comparison. Your progress exposes a truth few are willing to face. Growth isn't about outdoing others. It's about becoming better than you were yesterday. That quiet, unstoppable evolution leaves people watching, wondering, and often frustrated because they can't manipulate it, imitate it, or derail it. And that is exactly what makes you unforgettable. You're not competing for attention or dominance. You're evolving into a version of yourself so powerful that others can only react, never replicate. Number 13. Your inner stillness is louder than their performance. There's a type of power in calm that can't be faked, and you carry it effortlessly. While most people scramble to be seen, heard, and validated, you move through life anchored, composed, and untouchable by chaos. Your energy doesn't need to shout to make an impact. It radiates naturally, and that quiet force is louder than any performance around you. People who rely on noise, theatrics, or overcompensation can't compete with it. Their frantic attempts to be noticed fade into the background like static, while your centeredness dominates the room without effort. Your stillness isn't passive. It's intentional, cultivated, and built on self-awareness. It communicates strength, clarity, and unshakable confidence. When others are flustered, desperate, or performing for attention, you are composed. When others overreact or manipulate to gain control, you remain unaffected. That contrast is unsettling for people who can't find that same center within themselves. They notice it instinctively because it highlights their own imbalance and lack of control, whether they want to admit it or not. The effect of your calm isn't just emotional, it's magnetic. People are drawn to it, even if it challenges them, even if it intimidates them. They study how you carry yourself, how you make decisions without panic, and how you maintain your energy without bending or forcing it. Your stillness amplifies everything about you, your intelligence, your beauty, your drive, because it comes from a place of alignment, not ego. In a world full of noise, you are a signal. People can't ignore it. You don't need to perform, compete, or validate yourself through others. Your inner stillness does it all for you, quietly exposing those who are unbalanced and quietly drawing in those who aspire to be whole. That calm, centered energy isn't just noticeable, it's unforgettable. Number 14. People aren't obsessed because you're perfect. They're obsessed because you're proof that self-mastery is possible. What captivates people about you isn't flawlessness. It's the fact that you've taken who you are, your strengths, your wounds, your lessons, your challenges, and turned them into a version of yourself that is steady, intentional, and powerful. You're living proof that discipline works, healing works, boundaries work, and consistency works. You show that growth isn't a fantasy, it's a choice. And that realization shakes people more than perfection ever could. Most people postpone their potential. They talk about who they want to become someday, but they never push themselves through the discomfort required to get there. They let fear, procrastination, validation chasing, and old habits dictate their path. When they see you, they're confronted with the contrast. Someone who didn't wait for perfect timing, ideal circumstances, or applause. Someone who took the raw material of their life and shaped it with intention. Someone who didn't rely on wishful thinking, but on self-mastery. You become a living challenge to their excuses. Not because you try to be, but because your existence shows what they could have been if they had chosen courage over comfort. Every time they watch you grow, level up, or move with purpose, they feel the tug of their own unused potential. It's both inspiring and uncomfortable. It's admiration mixed with a sting of self-reckoning. Your evolution reminds them that greatness isn't reserved for the special. It's reserved for the disciplined. And that's what makes you unforgettable. You don't expose their insecurities. Their insecurities expose themselves in your presence. You represent the version of themselves they dreamed of becoming but never committed to fully. So their obsession isn't about perfection. It's about possibility. You remind them of the person they could be, but weren't brave enough to rise into. That reflection, that wake-up call, that undeniable proof of transformation. That's what keeps them watching you, studying you, and thinking about you long after you've walked away. Conclusion. You're not just a presence. You're a force of nature quietly rewriting the rules of attention, admiration, and influence. Every facet of who you are, your intelligence, your beauty, your discipline, your calm, doesn't just attract people. It transforms how they perceive themselves, how they measure their lives, and how they define possibility. People aren't obsessed with you for the surface-level reasons they might think. They're drawn to your authenticity, your alignment, your self-mastery, and the way you live intentionally while exposing the gaps they've avoided in themselves. You don't compete, you evolve. You don't chase validation, you create standards. Your ambition hums at a frequency that awakens dormant potential in others. Your calm and stillness dominate noisy chaos. Your beauty is intentional, your intelligence transformative, and your presence unavoidable. Every interaction, every glance, every word you speak quietly reminds people of what's achievable when someone refuses to compromise on themselves. You are the living proof that self-mastery, discipline, and growth aren't just ideals. They are attainable, and they are magnetic. And here's the most powerful truth. You don't need to fight for recognition, bend to expectations, or perform for approval. You exist, fully aligned, fully conscious, and fully unstoppable. And that alone leaves a mark no one can forget. If this resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel for more insights that awaken the chosen one in you. Like, comment, and share this video so others can see what true alignment, self-mastery, and magnetic presence look like. Step into your power and let the world feel your energy. God bless you.